Patch 9.2 in Zereth Mortis comes a flurry of new materials to not only be farming, selling, crafting with, but more importantly, making some gold from. So let's spend the next few minutes looking at what they are, what they're used for, and how we can go about getting them. These videos are made possible by my Patreons. The generosity of these few individuals makes it possible for me to bring this content to you. Level up your goal making and become a goblin today. First, we have a new herb, the first flower. Now, like all new materials, these can be found across all of Zereth Mortis. Now, while only being lootable by players with the herbalism profession, a lucky few of you may also be able to find this being rewarded on their Covenant mission table. Now, this is mostly going to be required by alchemists for crafting a new healing potion, and for the latest version of the Crafter's Mark optional reagents. Also remember that scribes may be interested in this new herb, as it will offer an alternative way for them to acquire the pigments needed for the inks. Secondly, we have a new ore, the Progenium Ore. This is also exclusive to the Zereth Mortis zone and can be gathered by any player with the mining profession. Now, this will most likely see far more of a demand than the first flower, as it is wanted by not only blacksmiths, engineers, but also jewel crafters. Unlike the first flower, this is required in the crafting of the new vestige of Eternal by both jewel crafters and blacksmiths. And as we know, the legendary crafting is big business in Shadowlands and is likely to help keep the price of this new material a little bit higher for that little bit longer. It can also be prospected by jewel crafters though, with a very high rate of gems, but with a low rate of essences. Only time will tell just how important this material will become to the jewel crafters. Now, engineers, they're going to show some demand for this item, but it will only be in very small quantities, and so probably due to this, it won't have too much of an effect on its price. Thirdly, we have a new leather, the Protogenic Pelt. So dust off that skinning tune and go hunting out in Zereth Mortis, and you might just come across this new leather. Now, it is currently believed that it's only going to drop from the strongest of creatures within Zereth Mortis, causing your average skinner to maybe want to group up with fellow skinners to go hunt down those rare creatures for their pelt, causing an interesting new dynamic to the way the skinning profession works. Now, leather workers, these are going to be your main customers for this new leather, so they require it for both the new Crafter's Marks patterns and their vestige of Eternal for legendary base crafting. Scribes are going to be in need of a small amount of this for the latest Vantis rune and the Enlightened contract, but with neither of these items actually being available for a short time into the patch, their effect on the market will only be small. Next, we have ourselves a new cloth, or more precisely, a new silk. It's the Silken Protofiber. Now, like most cloth in the game, this doesn't actually have any profession requirements to gather, and it drops most frequently from the worms and the spiders in and around Zereth Mortis, of which I can tell you now, there are plenty. Tailors are going to require the lion's share of this material, thus once again they're going to need it for their Crafter's Marks patterns and for the vestige of the Eternal base legendary crafting optional reagent. Next on the list, we have the two new food-based materials. These are going to be the Protoflesh and the Precurser Plasoderm. Now, Protoflesh can be very easily acquired from almost any beast in Zereth Mortis, and the Precurser Plasoderm can be fished from any open water, or at a slightly higher rate from fishing pools within the zone. Now, of great concern is the actual lack of use for these new materials. Both are only required for one very specific purpose, and that is as a contribution to the new feast. This, unlike regular feasts, is a community-driven feast, where one player first places down a cooking pot for others to contribute to. Once full, all the players will receive their buff. Now, only time will tell if this will be well received by the player base, as it further complicates what, at heart, should be a very simple process of just buffing up. Expect a very low cost on these new materials if the general player base continues to use the regular feasts instead. The last new material is a special one. In fact, it's a legendary one, the Progenitor Essentia. Now try saying that quickly 3 times. This is, I believe it to be, the bottleneck material throughout most of the patch, and one to really try and make some gold from. It is both hard to find and used by many patterns, so this creates the perfect storm for high prices. It's gathered by herbalists and miners, albeit at a snail's pace, or occasionally can be looted from treasures within Zereth Mortis. Many people are going to see comparison to Korthia's Korthite crystal with this new material, but this one is looking considerably more difficult and random to be able to find. Unlike the Korthite crystal, this is needed for more than just legendary crafting though. The item level 262 crafted gear is going to require these as well. This might put a very large strain on the supply of these in the early weeks of the patch. To summarise, although all of these new materials are labelled as rare and as such given the blue colouring, I'm increasingly feeling that this will not necessarily be reflected in their price. With so few uses for all of these new materials, coupled with a very heavy incentive for most players to basically live in Zereth Mortis for many weeks, this might drive down the price of these materials incredibly fast. Now the only exception to this might be the Progenitor Essentia, or Pog Essence as I like to call it, which was remarkably hard to find reliable sources for on the PTR. All that said though, I am only one person, so my experiences might not be totally representative of the markets once the game goes live. I feel the market to make some good gold from these new materials will probably be very short, and if you want to make most of your gold from gathering and selling materials, you might quickly look to the current existing materials for better gold per hour results. If you enjoyed this video, boys and girls, remember to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.